Nicole Smile was born on April 11, 1983, in Stuart, Florida. Although she later relocated to Mississippi, where she ultimately built her life, Ashley always retained a deep affection for the beauty of her home state. Thanks to her aptitude for mathematics and technology, she dedicated her career to teaching both subjects as a high school teacher, a role she cherished and found immensely fulfilling. Despite her many work obligations, Ashley also made time for her personal life and was in a relationship with Carly Gregg, with whom she had her first daughter. In 2009, the couple welcomed their second daughter, Carly Madison Gregg. Ashley's love for both girls profoundly overshadowed any other emotions she had ever experienced. However, life with Kevin was increasingly becoming more difficult. Kevin's behavior deteriorated significantly. In addition to being bipolar, he abused various illegal substances. To make matters worse, he showed little concern about whether his daughters witnessed his worst moments. The real tragedy that befell the family occurred when the eldest daughter died under undisclosed circumstances. Carly was only 4 years old at the time, which deeply affected her. A few years later, after her parents divorced, she began experiencing depressive episodes that occasionally led to self-injury. Despite receiving specialized care, Carly exhibited clear signs of improvement over time. Carly eventually met Hit Smiley, a wonderful man, and they soon married, with Carly adopting his surname. Hit embraced Carly's upbringing as if she were his own daughter, and they settled into a beautiful, cozy home in Brandon, a suburb of Jackson, the capital city. The family appeared to be a model of happiness. Ashley was a strong, compassionate, and remarkable woman in every respect, especially as a dedicated mother. She cherished reading, spending quality time with her family, playing video games, and walking their 2 dogs. Whenever possible, she loved to travel to Florida to enjoy the beaches or visit Disney World with her beloved daughter, Carly. Fortunately, by that time, the issues that once haunted Carly seemed to be behind her. In fact, at the age of 14, her challenges were no more significant than those of any typical adolescent. Aside from a few minor incidents requiring attention, Carly was an outstanding student who excelled in martial arts at the high school where her mother taught mathematics, earning the respect and affection of everyone around her. Sometimes, Carly would refer to her mother in a negative light, which, upon reflection, is not surprising for someone her age, especially considering they had to see each other daily at school. For many kids, this situation is far from ideal. Some classmates reported that Carly had mentioned experiencing abuse at home, but the oddity lay in the fact that it was clear to everyone that she was fortunate to have such loving and caring parents who were always concerned for her well-being. Consequently, none of her classmates took Carly's claims seriously. On the morning of Tuesday, March 19, 2024, as was her routine, Ashley woke up, made tea, and headed off to school with her daughter, while her husband went to work. The day unfolded like any other, and as a result, no one at school or in the neighborhood anticipated that, in just a few hours, a tragedy of unimaginable proportions would occur. Later that afternoon, after school had ended, a friend of Carly's received a message at home simultaneously with another message in which Carly affectionately asked how much longer her friend would take to get home. However, when her little friend arrived, Carly greeted her with an unusual question. She wanted to know if her friend was disgusted by dead bodies. The girl felt a mix of fear and confusion, assuming it was merely an odd jest on Carly's part. So, when Carly promptly urged her to follow her, she didn't hesitate and went with her to Carly's bedroom. There, the friend was confronted with a horrifying sight. On the floor, In the middle of a reddish puddle lay Carly's mother, apparently lifeless. Although Carly wanted to explain something, she felt dizzy and short of breath. Without fully comprehending her friend's words, she ran away in a panic a few minutes later, exactly at 5 p.m. As she stood in front of her house, the moment she opened the door, a gunshot rang out just centimeters from her face. The weapon was aimed directly at her by her stepdaughter. Everything transpired in an instant. Amid the chaos of gunfire, the man lunged at the teenager, grappling with her until he successfully overpowered and disarmed her. She screamed in terror, as if she had encountered a demon. In the blink of an eye, her stepfather bolted outside, attempting to catch her, but she leaped over the backyard fence and fled. Initially, the first thought that crossed his mind was that there was an intruder somewhere, and that Carly was merely fleeing to protect herself. Completely bewildered by the encounter and clutching his shoulder, which had apparently sustained a bullet wound, he advanced to search the master bedroom, the bathroom, the closet, and even the guest bedroom, but found nothing amiss. Convinced that the would-be burglar could only be hiding in Carly's room, he headed there, only to be met with a shocking sight. His wife, then 40 years old, lay lifeless on the floor, face up, a stained towel covering her face, with no indication of an intruder. Still in a state of shock and desperation, he contacted emergency services. The police and paramedics arrived promptly, finding him lying in the driveway, grimacing from pain in his shoulder. Body cam footage from one of the officers captured him tearfully, recounting the horrifying discovery he had made inside the house. He explained, as best he could, that his daughter was inside, and in the confusion of the moment, she had accidentally shot him in the shoulder. The police then requested a detailed description of the young girl, while hit was being attended to by a paramedic. As the officer sought further information about Carly, his colleagues entered the property. From that moment on, Carly was deemed the sole and primary suspect in the apparent murder of her mother and the assault on her stepfather. Consequently, various agencies, including the Mississippi Highway Patrol, mobilized to help locate her, deploying helicopters in the search. Meanwhile, Hit was transported to a local hospital, understandably in tears. Approximately 30 minutes later, the young girl was found in Ada, not far from the residence, and was arrested without incident. By that time, news of the tragedy had spread throughout the community, and although the school was large, most students had already heard about the events that had transpired. Carly was placed in the County Juvenile Detention Center. Later, the sheriff held a brief press conference to address the situation, yet no indication was provided regarding the possible motive for the alleged crime. Ashley's body was taken to the state medical examiner for forensic analysis. The following day, the Mississippi House of Representatives adjourned as a tribute to her memory. In the days that followed, a sense of dismay hung heavily in the air. Some students agreed to speak to the media, describing an overwhelming sense of terror, something they never imagined could occur in their environment. This atmosphere of fear only deepened the immense pain felt by their teachers, whose expressions spoke volumes. The overall mood of the institution was one of profound sadness and confusion. In any case, the school counselors and mental health specialists were available to assist any staff members who needed support. However, initially, it was the children closest to Carly who gave the least credence to the situation. A friend mentioned to the local press that she never saw any concerning signs in Carly, a sentiment echoed by nearly everyone who interacted with her in the hours leading up to the attack, affirming that there was no noticeable change in her behavior. As the investigation progressed, detectives discovered that the surveillance video from her home portrayed her in a very different light. Right after the gunshots, her demeanor and gestures suggested a kind of indifference to what had occurred, as if the life she had just destroyed had no impact on her whatsoever. Based on this evidence, during her first court appearance that same week, Carly was charged as an adult with murder and attempted murder. She pleaded not guilty to the charges, but was still remanded to an adult jail with a bail set at $1 million as of that date. $1 million. And from that moment on, social media was flooded with messages of love for the beloved teacher. At the same time, Carly's profiles were inundated with messages expressing immense anger and indignation towards her, as many accused her of committing the grave mistake of taking the life of an incredible woman. In the eyes of some, the girl had merely exacerbated her own problems to conceal her personal difficulties. Others, however, expressed their prayers for the young woman. On the afternoon of Thursday, March 28th, a service celebrating Ashley's life was held at the local Baptist church. The family requested that, in her honor, donations be made to a foundation supporting those affected by spinal muscular atrophy, SMA. In the following days and weeks, police learned that Carly was apparently being treated for borderline personality disorder, characterized by drastic mood swings. Many colleagues and friends provided interviews to the authorities, which helped create a much more nuanced profile of Carly's personality and revealed certain details that contradicted the seemingly exemplary image most people had of her as a daughter and student. One individual mentioned that Carly had pasted symbols related to death on her computer. Of course, this detail did not necessarily imply anything sinister. For example, her fondness for the band Nirvana, whose t-shirt Carly wore on the day of the events, was seen as a mere expression of her musical taste. However, what many agreed on was that the young woman frequently spoke of her mother with hatred. In this context, one student remarked that Carly's attitude towards her mother was not mutual, as anyone who attended classes could attest. Who had attended classes knew that she always spoke with great pride about her daughter, considering how complicated mother-daughter relationships tend to be, especially during the teenage years. All her classmates noted that they had minimized her statements, deeming them typical of someone her age. However, alarm bells rang for the detectives when a student mentioned overhearing Carly say that she was planning to take her mother's life. Among all the interviews, the one that truly helped authorities piece together the puzzle was that of a friend who had argued with Carly earlier that same Tuesday at school. From that testimony, the authorities reconstructed the sequence of events as follows. Concerned about Carly's violent tendencies and her lifestyle, which included drug use, the boy felt compelled to inform his friend's mother. After all, like many at school, he respected and admired Ashley. He sent her a text message revealing what her daughter had been sneaking around doing. That afternoon, around 3:30, when mother and daughter returned home, Ashley went to Carly's room and began searching until she finally discovered the items in question: marijuana, vaporizers, cigarettes, and even secret cell phones that she apparently used to communicate with a boyfriend her mother was unaware of. Ashley immediately confronted her, but Carly was quick enough to evade the discussion. In a matter of seconds, she slipped away to her room, knowing that there was a gun hidden neatly under her mattress. With it tucked behind her back, she returned to her room and, without a word, fired 3 shots. The detonations, accompanied by her mother's horrified scream, echoed throughout the house, and when the woman fell to the floor, there was no turning back. Carly then walked calmly to the kitchen, aware that a security camera was positioned in front of her. She hid the gun behind her, leaving it on the table and covering it with her body. Sitting down as if nothing had happened, she took her cell phone and sent the messages we already know to her stepfather and her friend. According to the authorities, her plan was to wait for a hit that would end her life, as well as her friends. They believed she intended to involve her friend in some way, as she was unaware of what she would find and would not hesitate to act, which indeed happened. In this context, the girl in question told the police that Carly had described her plans to her. Investigators found no evidence to support the allegations of abuse by Carly's mother, who was ultimately acquitted of any wrongdoing. If found guilty, Carly could face the possibility of receiving 2 life sentences. Despite this, she rejected a plea bargain that would have offered her a 40-year prison sentence. This rejection was part of her defense strategy, which asserted a plea of not guilty on mental health grounds, hoping to sway the final verdict in her favor. During the trial held in September 2024, her lawyers argued that the teenager was experiencing a mental health crisis on the day of the incident and, as a result, did not even remember the attack. This assertion was supported by a child psychologist who testified about Carly's history of depression. Relating to the day of the events, he noted that the young girl was irritable, moody, and unable to concentrate in class, with the final symptom of that day being memory loss. Likewise, the specialist indicated that the teenager experienced significant mood swings, heard voices, and faced worsening dissociative issues just hours before the incident. He also stated that, in his opinion, Carly deeply valued her mother's approval. Consequently, being exposed as a drug user triggered a crisis for her. Much of the community supported the defense's portrayal of events. Carly's stepfather described her as a sweet girl and emphasized that, without a doubt, she and her mother loved each other. On the day of the tragedy, he characterized Carly's behavior as extremely unusual, something he had never even witnessed in movies. In his words, she was not herself, and he found it hard to believe she could have acted as she did. Before concluding his testimony, he added that he and Carly continued to speak daily, and that their relationship remained strong. In fact, both the recording of the emergency call made by the stepfather and the audio obtained from the body camera of the officers who responded to the scene captured Carly's inability to stop crying. Despite this, the courtroom remained silent when, unexpectedly, the defendant burst into laughter as one of her lawyers wrote her a note on a piece of paper. To stifle her reaction, the young girl covered her mouth with her hand. Her hand covered her mouth as the court heard statements indicating that, at the time of the events, Carly was reading Fyodor Dostoevsky's novel, Crime and Punishment. In this story, the student Raskolnikov convinces himself that he is justified in killing and robbing an elderly pawnbroker, believing it will help him, an extraordinary individual, achieve great things. Ultimately, he is declared mentally disturbed and sentenced to 8 years of hard labor. Another aspect that emerged during the trial was that the firearm in question was actually a security measure used by Ashley, who feared that her ex-partner and Carly's father might appear unexpectedly. Several of Carly's friends testified that her cannabis use had begun just 6 weeks earlier, with a significant increase in usage during that time. They also mentioned that she had experimented with cocaine and magic mushrooms. During closing arguments, the prosecution dismissed the defendant's claims of amnesia, asserting that she was aware of her actions at the time of the attack. They highlighted her ability to conceal the gun from the security camera and her statements about planning to kill her stepfather, arguing that this demonstrated she understood the difference between right and wrong and had shown no remorse. When the jury in Rankin County, Mississippi, found Carly Madison Gregg guilty on all charges, she was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her mother, Ashley Smile, and for the attempted murder of her stepfather. Well, boys and girls, today's video covers a shocking case, primarily due to the identity of both the victim and her perpetrator, a mere 15-year-old girl. For many, it's hard to believe that she could commit such an act, especially since she had not shown obvious signs of behavior that would raise alarms among those around her. Although Carly had expressed a desire to kill her mother on several occasions, her calm demeanor in court and her laughter during proceedings raised concerns. As we saw at the beginning, she cried when she heard her sentence and also did so on another occasion. In the end, she received the longest possible sentence for the two charges, taking her mother's life and attempting to take her stepfather's life. If you found this video informative, remember to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I post updates 3 to 4 times a week, and if you're subscribed, you'll receive a notification every time I upload a new video. Until next time, and see you in another case. Goodbye.